He was trembling, alone, sweating blood, and saying a phrase that no one imagined hearing from the mouth of the Son of God, "Father, if it is possible, take this cup from me." Why did Jesus, of all people, ask to flee? What did he see that night that was so terrifying that it even made the sky fall silent? And why this hidden moment in the garden? Perhaps it explains exactly what you are experiencing now. Because if even Jesus trembled, what was really about to happen there? And why doesn't anyone talk about this detail? When you understand Gethsemane, nothing in your faith will remain the same. He had just broken bread, he had washed feet, he had revealed the betrayal, and yet the night still seemed calm. The disciples walked with him, perhaps believing that this would be just another ordinary journey to the garden. But while they walked in silence, Jesus already carried an invisible weight that no one else perceived. It was as if all of heaven already knew, except them. The Gospels describe, "And when they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives." Matthew 26:30. It's a detail that seems simple, but hides something profound. Singing after the Last Supper was tradition, probably the Hallel Psalms. But imagine Jesus intoning words of praise as he walks to the place where his soul will be crushed. This is not religious routine. It is conscious surrender. It is the courage of one who will sing before sweating blood. Perhaps you've already experienced something similar. On the outside, everything seems normal. You go to work, post a photo, even smile. But inside, the diagnosis has already arrived. The news has already dropped like a bomb. The decision has already been made, but no one saw it. The world continues to think it's just another night, but you've already entered your own Gethsemane, even if no one sees it in your eyes. And that's why this scene is so powerful, because it shows that Jesus began to sweat blood long before the first drop fell. He was already at war while the others thought it was just another stroll. But what was about to happen in that garden was far more serious than anyone there could have imagined. Why Gethsemane of all places? Why not a synagogue or the top of a mountain as before? Jesus could have chosen any place to face the pain that was to come, but he returns precisely to that silent garden, hidden among olive trees, which he already knew so well. The question is inevitable. Why choose this setting to experience the most agonizing moment in history? The Gospel of John says that Jesus often met there with his disciples, John 18:2. It was an intimate, familiar place, almost a refuge. Gethsemane had no spotlights, no crowds. It was simple, hidden. But perhaps that was precisely what Jesus wanted, to be in a place where heaven and soul could meet without distractions, a familiar ground, to wage an invisible war. You also have your places like that, the closed car where you cry silently, the work bathroom where you take deep breaths trying to hold on, the dark room where you kneel and no one sees. Gethsemane wasn't just any place. It was one of those secret places where the soul bears itself before God, where there's no audience, only truth, tears, and prayer. But that was just the beginning. Gethsemane wasn't chosen by chance, but it wasn't the final destination either. Because what was about to happen inside Jesus there is what truly reveals why he sweated blood on that dark night. Within that silent garden, Jesus breaks the silence with a confession that echoes to this day. My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Matthew 26:38. It is the very Son of God saying that he is in agony. But why? How could he who healed the sick and calmed storms now tremble inwardly? What was weighing upon him to the point of using such intense words? The text shows that he takes Peter, James, and John with him. And there, before his closest friends, Jesus reveals his pain with vulnerability. It's not acting. It's not symbolic, it's real. He stands before the abyss and he says so aloud. The Jesus of glory also feels profound sadness, and this does not diminish him. On the contrary, it reveals the greatness of one who chooses not to hide his pain, even though he is God. Perhaps you've felt this too. a weight in your chest that won't go away, a paralyzing fear, an inexplicable emptiness. We learn to hide it, but Jesus doesn't hide it. He shows himself to be fragile, human, real. It's as if he were saying, I know exactly how you feel when everything inside you screams, but no one around you understands. But this anguish, however intense it may be, still doesn't explain the sweat of blood. You have something else happening inside. And that's where the Bible begins to reveal an even deeper mystery, something that is about to overflow from Jesus' body. The phrase is short, but frightening. His sweat became like drops of blood falling to the ground. Luke 22:44. Many people pass by this verse without realizing the magnitude of the tension there. Is it literal? Is it a metaphor? The truth is that the level of internal pressure on Jesus broke physical barriers. His entire body collapsed emotionally, as if saying, I can't hold this in anymore, just internally. Scholars call this phenomenon hematidrosis, when the capillaries around the sweat glands rupture under extreme stress. But the most important thing is not the technical name, it's what it reveals. Jesus didn't just feel fear, he was overwhelmed by something that transcended physical pain. It was the spiritual and emotional collapsing upon the flesh. It was the invisible becoming visible. Perhaps you've already experienced a moment like this. That crisis where the body feels what the soul is trying to hide. The hand trembles, the chest tightens, sleep disappears, cold sweat comes. Jesus went through this, not symbolically, but in reality. The pain you feel today, he carried it that night until it became blood flowing on the ground of a garden. But what truly makes Jesus sweat blood isn't just the fear of torture, the cross, or death. What lies behind that sweat has a name, and the Bible calls it the cup. And it is this cup that is about to be revealed. Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me. Luke 22:42. This is Jesus' most human prayer. It's not just any request. It's a cry from someone facing something so heavy, so bitter, that even the Son of God, who always said yes, now reveals a desire to flee. But what cup is this? What dark contents would make Jesus ask not to drink? It wasn't just the physical suffering of the cross. It wasn't just the pain of the nails. The cup represented the wrath of sin, the separation, the weight of all humanity on the shoulders of the Lamb. It was a cup full of abandonment, guilt, and condemnation that wasn't his, it was ours. Jesus knew that, in accepting it, he would be crushed not only by the pain, but by the momentary distance from the Father. How many times have you also wanted to run away? You knew what was right, but everything inside you screamed for a way out, to remain silent when you want to scream, to forgive when everything inside you wants revenge, to end a toxic cycle, to confess a mistake, to face a truth. Jesus knows this conflict because he lived this dilemma head-on. He also wanted to escape, but he chose to obey. But while Jesus decides to say yes to the Father's plan, something even more painful happens, because those who promised to be with him simply fall asleep. And that's when the loneliness of Gethsemane becomes even deeper. Jesus returns from the place where he poured out his soul in prayer and finds the disciples sleeping, not once, but 3 times. The same ones who said they would be with him until the end can now not even stay awake for an hour. What hurts is not just their exhaustion, but the contrast. While heaven weighs heavily on Jesus, his closest friends simply pass out. The loneliness now is not symbolic, it is literal. Couldn't you men watch with me 1 hour? He asks. Im 6:40. There is no anger in these words, there is pain. Jesus understands human limitations, but that doesn't lessen the disappointment. He didn't expect perfection, only presence. But even there, on the eve of the cross, he experiences what many of us already know well, the absence of the one who promised to stay. Have you ever experienced this? In the worst moment of your life, some people simply disappeared. Messages went unanswered. Promises were forgotten. company turned to silence. Anguish seems greater when you experience it alone. But Jesus understands, because the place where he most needed support became the place of solitary waiting. But what seems like abandonment doesn't stop Jesus from moving forward. On the contrary, it is in this poignant silence that Gethsemane reveals itself through its very name. Because more than a garden, Gethsemane is a press. And what happens to the olives there has everything to do with what is about to happen to Jesus. Gethsemane is not just a pretty name. In Hebrew, it literally means oil press. It's the place where olives were crushed to release their purest oil. And Jesus chooses this exact place to experience the crushing of his soul. Nothing is by chance. The setting perfectly matches what is happening in his spirit. Pain, pressure, and an essence being extracted. Olives only release their oil when they are crushed, and olive oil was used to anoint kings, light lamps, and consecrate priests. In other words, from pain comes light, direction, purpose. Jesus is being crushed in Gethsemane, not before soldiers, but before the Father. And from this press, something begins to be poured out. A love that illuminates, a sacrifice that consecrates, a surrender that saves. Perhaps you are feeling this way today, crushed by circumstances, squeezed by losses, by injustice, by prayers that seem unanswered. But perhaps your Gethsemane is also extracting something sacred, a deeper faith, an empathy that didn't exist before. An intimacy with God that is only born in the dark, because even the oil needs the press. But Jesus' Gethsemane doesn't end in the garden. That night wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The choice made there opens a path that goes far beyond the olive trees. And that's where our story comes in, with a question only you can answer. What is your Gethsemane? Perhaps it's a room where you pray and receive no answer. A hospital room filled with uncertainty, a heart-stopping medical report. Or perhaps it's just the silence, when everything seems to be collapsing inside. Each of us carries our own garden of agony, where the soul groans and the world has no idea. And it is precisely there that Jesus meets you. The Bible says that we have a high priest who sympathizes with our weaknesses, Hebrews 4:15. That changes everything. Because the Jesus who faced the bloody Gethsemane is the same one who sees you in your secret garden. He doesn't observe from afar. He understands. He's been there. And that's why, even when you're sweating, trembling inside, and want to give up, he says, I know what it's like, and I'm here. Today, Gethsemane might represent the unresolved issue, the unhealed heart, the nameless pain. But what Jesus showed that night is that the path of faith doesn't avoid anguish, it goes through it. And that changes how we suffer. Because now, even when everything seems dark, there's someone on the other side saying, you are not alone. But the way Jesus goes through Gethsemane is not just a consolation, it is also an invitation, because he not only survived that night, he showed us a way. And it is precisely this way that can transform your dark night into something sacred. Jesus didn't just suffer in silence. He left a trail, a path, 3 clear steps that he himself trod on that dark night. He spoke the truth, prayed sincerely, and surrendered his will. This isn't a magic formula. It's a model of raw, real, unvarnished faith. Instead of remaining silent, Jesus said, my soul is overwhelmed with sorrow. He didn't deny the pain. He named it. Then he prayed, Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me. It is a courageous prayer because it reveals a real desire to escape pain. But immediately afterward, Jesus shows what complete trust means. Yet not my will, but yours be done. He does not suppress what he feels. He surrenders. And in this movement, the soul finds rest even in the midst of pressure. You can follow that same path today. Speak to God without filters. Say what truly hurts. Pray sincerely, even if your prayer is confused or full of tears. And finally, surrender, not as one who gives up, but as one who trusts. Gethsemane is not conquered by force, but by surrender. Jesus showed this with his own blood. But one piece is still missing, a detail that changes everything, because what if, at that moment, Jesus had chosen the easier path? What if he had retreated? It is here that we realize the true weight of Gethsemane and how that choice resonates even today. What if, that night, Jesus had said no? What if he had retreated into the garden, turned his back, and disappeared into the shadows? This question seems impossible, but it needs to be asked, because Gethsemane was a real crossroads. It wasn't theater. It was a decision, and every drop of sweat mixed with blood carries the weight of a choice that could have been different. Without Gethsemane, there would be no cross. Without the cross, there would be no resurrection. Without resurrection, there would be no hope. It's frightening to think about, but it's true. The eternity of humanity passed through a garden that morning. The world didn't see it. Jerusalem slept. The disciples dozed. But there, among olive trees, the destiny of grace was sealed with tears, pain, and obedience. And this confronts us, because our decisions, even behind the scenes, also shape futures. Sometimes, it is in that moment when no one sees, the difficult conversation, the silent choice, the solitary renunciation, that a new destiny begins to be written. Jesus showed us that obedience in the dark is worth more than appearances in the light, because it is in solitude that faith reveals its essence. And that's why understanding Gethsemane isn't just about looking to the past. It's about facing the living truth that the Bible places before us today, because that night didn't end in bloodshed. It began a journey that leads us to the climax of salvation. And now, it's time to reveal what Gethsemane truly meant for heaven and for you. Gethsemane is not just a point on the map of Jerusalem. It is the ground where the greatest yes in history was said amidst sweat and blood. It is the moment when the Son of God, faced with the unbearable weight of sin, chose to be crushed so that you could be forgiven. Salvation didn't begin on the cross. It began there in the dark when no one was watching, when he decided it was worth suffering for you. Jesus knows your darkest nights because he went through one that none of us could endure. He knows what it is to feel fear, abandonment, agony. But unlike us, he did not run away. He stayed. He sweated blood, and from the press of Gethsemane flowed the oil of salvation. The lamp of hope was lit that night, and today it continues to illuminate every heart that enters its own garden and says, "Thy will be done, Father." Because Gethsemane is not just history, it's a living mystery, a spiritual place that is activated every time someone kneels in tears and makes the hardest choice, to trust. And every time that happens, that decision of Jesus reverberates once more. The echo of that yes crosses time and touches your night now. He chose to continue even when no one else could bear it. And the next time you feel like you're about to fall apart, remember? There was a night when Jesus sweated blood so that you would never have to walk through the darkness alone again. When you go through your dark night, remember Gethsemane. Because there, in the silence of a garden, Jesus did not flee. He stayed, he sweated blood, and he decided to continue out of love for you. That decision changed everything. And it can also change the way you face your pain, your fears, your dilemmas. If Gethsemane showed Jesus' most intimate moment of pain, in the next video we'll go deeper. I'll show you 13 secrets about the life of Jesus that history has tried to hide. Click here now and discover the 13 secrets that explain why Jesus' life was unlike anything you've ever heard. Because the Jesus who sweated blood for you in Gethsemane also hid precious secrets in his own life. And perhaps one of those secrets is exactly what you need to discover today. Subscribe now and turn on notifications. Each video here is another step toward discovering what the Bible has never stopped revealing. It's just been hidden from hasty eyes.